like to welcome you to BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. We have with us today the one, the only, Senator Nathaniel McFadden. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Donnie. How are you?
You are a legend.
You could tell my wife that.
Well, I came here today because you have so much history. And first of all, we just have to commend the beautiful artwork everywhere. I mean, it's just, you live around such beauty. But tell us the story. Tell us your story.
My story? Born in Philadelphia, 1946. My mother and father, my father had just come out of World War II. He worked at ESSO, that's the precursor to Exxon.
Mm-hmm.
And
ESSO, I remember that.
ESSO, it was ESSO, that's where he worked. But he had a problem with the bottle.
Okay.
And my mama was a Christian. And you know, she didn't play that. She come out of Sandtown, Winchester. So in 49, she got us together at the Pennsylvania station in Philly and brought us back to Baltimore to Penn Station down here. And we went to live with my uncle and my grandmother at Riggs Avenue, Riggs and Mount, right on the corner. Right now there's a police station across the corner.
So you're a Sandtown native?
Sandtown, St. John's AME Church.
In Church Square?
In Church Square. Reverend Gray. That was the old days. But my uncle was in the front room. My grandmother was in the back room, and we were in the middle room on Riggs Avenue. So it was my two brothers and my sister and my mother. So my mother and sister slept in a bed, and my brothers and all, we all had little bunk beds. And it was in the middle room, but we always wanted a place of our own. And in 1956, we finally got a place in the projects, Flag House Projects.
So you went to East Baltimore?
That's the first stop in East Baltimore. Flag House Projects.
High rise or low rise?
High rise, 26 South Exeter 6E. I was in the high rise. They had just built those things a couple of years before we moved in. In fact, they were still kind of integrated. And
white people lived in Flag House?
White people lived in Flag House. We played ball with white people. I went to first in West Baltimore, I went to 132 when I was in Sandtown. That was Coppin Normal School. And then we moved my uncle got a better house because he worked for the post office.
Coppin Normal School, 1114 North Mount Street?
Yeah, 130, yeah, of course, 132. Supposed to be a special school. They say smart kids win. And I said, well, how in the world I get in this thing? But 132.
And that's home to Coppin State?
Yeah, that's the Coppin Normal School. That's where they trained all of your teachers. All the best teachers came out of Coppin, black. And that's where they got their training, at the Coppin Normal School. That's a little bit of history for you.
Very few people know 1114 North Mount was Coppin.
Right. And it's a good number to play, too. Anyway, after he got we wanted to move and get a bigger house. We moved to Ashburton Street. Ashburton off of Winchester.
Sandtown, East Baltimore.
Sandtown, then to, and I don't know what they call it now, but it was Ashburton and Winchester. It's where the Cade Armory was.
Oh, that part of Ashburton.
And then it's
Rosemont.
Yeah, well, that's what they call it then.
Yes.
But then Calverton. And then they put up a school after we had moved. But then I went to James Mosier for 1 year. They put me in the wrong school. But after that, they transferred us to Alexander Hamilton, 145.
At South Baltimore?
At Lafayette and Poplar Grove.
Okay.
St. Edward's across the street.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's all the nuns and everything. So behind our house on Ashburton Street was just woods and Cade Armory. But now it's Calverton Middle School, I think. But anyway, we stayed there for a couple of years, but my mother finally wanted a place. So in '56, we got one at Flag House Project, 6th floor. And that was my introduction to East Baltimore. Jewtown, you can't say that anymore because that's not politically correct, but it was right there. Little Italy was across the street. And our first integrated school I ever went to was David E. Wegline #2 at Pratt and Central. That was an integrated school. And that's where we went, and we had Italians that couldn't afford to go to Catholic school, because St. Leo's is the home church down there.
Okay.
Right? So if you couldn't go to Catholic school, the poor Italians went to school with us. And the same thing with the Poles. The Poles were on the other, were on the other side, the Mikulskis and all those kind of people, because it was a real mixed neighborhood. And it was a great 4 years. I was one of the first old blacks to work on Lumber Street.
It was more diverse than West Baltimore.
Oh, absolutely.
So West Baltimore at the time was black and white.
Oh, yeah, black and white.
But East Baltimore had Jewish people, Polish people, Italians, black folk,
Greeks. Yeah, Patarakis and now. They were up a little bit further. The H&S Bakery. Mikulski's people had a bakery. And see, that those were the Polish Catholic churches. Almost everything down there was Catholic. And we went to school with the little Italian boys. And they went home and told their parents that we were good Negroes, good colored people, and we wouldn't steal or anything, and we wouldn't fight them, because, they were our classmates. We didn't know much about discrimination. Well, we knew about discrimination, but they accepted us. And I tell you that story because we integrated St. Leo's baseball. We had a baseball field right down there. We call it the Pump. It's Scarlet Place is down there now.
Yes.
But Scarlet Place was a seed factory. The morgue was down there, and the pump was down there. The pump is they pump the water out to clean it up.
The morgue was there.
The morgue was the morgue.
That's currently at University of Maryland, was by Scarlet Place.
Oh yeah, right next to Scarlet Place. And there was a little baseball field down there. And it was the St. Leo's Little League. And I played for the Cubs. Me and a whole bunch of my buddies, we still around. One of my buddies from down there to this day is Van Eaton. Van was one of the first. We all went to David E. Wegline together. He went to Dunbar, I went to City. We all met back up at Morgan, and he was one of the first blacks to go to work for IBM.
I'm a baseball person. What was your position?
Pitcher, second base, and center field.
Any good?
Fair. I subsequently played for Edgar Lee Bell's Rockets when I moved to further up into East Baltimore.
Never heard of him.
I know. Edgar Lee Bell is a legend.
Edgar
Lee Bell was one of the Edgar Lee Bell and Leon Howard would feed basketball players to Dunbar.
You were playing basketball there?
No.
Baseball?
He had a basketball team and a baseball team. He had both. He worked at Social Security, had a little little van that he put us all in for baseball, and then he also had basketball.
Mixed?
No.
All black?
Different seasons. We were all black. All black baseball team, and then in the fall and the winter he had his basketball team.
James Mosier came around 1960. That was after you.
Oh yeah.
So
St. Leo's was early. James Mosier came later. A little bit later. That was a little bit later on the west side.
In your old neighborhood, James Mosier.
In my old neighborhood. I mean, to tell a story, if I want to tell a story all the way out, later on, I got involved with Northwood Little League. That was out there. Northwood was another feeder for Dunbar for football. But anyway, Edgar Lee Bell, baseball, we played baseball, so we played all the white boys. In Patterson, you thought discrimination, we had to, we had to beat them 10-0. Because if the score was close, the umpire was going to give it to them. But anyway, that's the story about that. I subsequently, when I started teaching in '68, I was the baseball coach at Dunbar. I was the JV baseball coach. Mr. Brown was the varsity baseball coach.
Mr. Danny, not Danny Brown.
No,
This is
no.
the other Brown. What was his name?
I'll forget it in a minute.
But I remember him.
His daughter is a Delta.
He didn't play.
He didn't play. So I was the manager. He didn't want to do it anymore. So I said, okay, I'll pick it up.
But didn't he come back years later and coach?
I think so. But yeah, I coached that. But anyway, let me get this going now. From 56 to 60, we went Flag House. Again, I got a job on, we used to have a live chicken man on Lombard Street. He sold live chickens. And I got my first job there because when I moved to East Baltimore, all the guys were wearing slick shoes and everything. And I wanted to get me some slick shoes. And back then, because we were on welfare, and my mother was a domestic, cleaning people's houses, so we couldn't afford that. They used to call it piecework, day work. And we could only have $5 to buy our shoes. And so and all the shoe stores were on Baltimore Street. And Floorshine was the joint. That was the place where they were getting all the nice shoes. But the nice shoes were $12 and $15 and $20. And all we had, the three of us had $5 and my sister had $5. So we had to go to what was real essentially a place like Pick and Pay and get them. And I cried because I wanted some nice shoes to walk around in East Baltimore. She said, $5 is all you have. If you want anything else, you go get a job. So I cried all the way walking back up Baltimore Street to Exeter.
How old were you?
11.
Now, pardon my ignorance.
12.
Were people hustling, selling drugs, or breaking law?
No.
So that wasn't even an option.
Oh, no, none of that.
How did those other people get it? They just had money?
What?
The shoes.
Look, we don't ask those kind of questions. Okay. They got them. It was a lot of stealing going on. Stuff like that. But no drug dealing. It's just, like you say, yeah, okay, you could say hustling. Shooting dikes, craps. Crap games were big. Stuff like that.
I imagine, so the prisons were like they are now, all up and down Greenmount?
No.
The penitentiary was there, though.
Oh, yeah. That was there. But no, the city jail and penitentiary was there. But all that stuff a lot of that stuff is new.
But I imagine your mother had that talk with you and your siblings.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, my uncle was the one. He's 1950 graduate of Moore. Okay? And he didn't play. So when we got out of line, after he got off of work with them big hands, because he was an Army veteran as well. And she would call him. So it was the fear of my mother, the fear of my uncle, but most importantly, the fear of God. Used to hear all the time, I brought you here.
I'll take you out.
Take you out. Certain things you just didn't do. You had respect for anything.
Were your grandparents around?
No, my grandmother died a little bit earlier. Back then, grandparents weren't living until they were like 50 or 60.
Were they from another state?
No, right here in Baltimore.
So your family goes back.
My mother's side were the Baileys. They were from the Eastern Shore, related to Frederick Douglass. See, Frederick Bailey Douglass. That's his name. But they were from
You're related to Frederick Douglass.
Yeah, they were from the Eastern Shore, on my mother's side. The Baileys on the other side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't
But
know that.
Anyway, and my father was McFadden from Savannah, Georgia. So those are my roots in Savannah, Georgia. My wife went down, and I visited one time. We went to a conference down there. Nice little place. Folks are still there. And my cousins and them sang behind Teddy Pendergrass. McFadden and Whitehead. Those are my cousins. They were the guys behind, whatever. But anyway, in '60, she finally wanted to move out of the projects and get a house. We wanted to be homeowners. So in 1960, she got another job, day job, and then she would do domestic work in the evening. She worked 2 jobs. And we got a house in 1960 at 2702 Muir Street. 2 little blocks off of Lakewood, Kenwood, and Luzerne. Clarence Du Burns lived 2630 Muir Street. Hattie Harrison lived 2721 Muir Street. Tiger Davis lived 2 blocks away at 2639 Burl Avenue. And Nathan Irby lived up on Federal Street at 2800.
The foundation of EDO.
Of the Eastside Democratic Organization. And I started in '68 teaching at Dunbar High School as a history teacher, history and geography teacher.
Oh, we didn't get to your high school yet, did we?
Well, my high school. All right, left Clifton in '61 to go to City College. And so we just walked up the street to City College. Back then, we walked everywhere.
This was after integration had occurred in Baltimore.
Oh, after integration occurred. Just after integration occurred in Baltimore. We went to City College in '61, and I graduated in '64. It was like 90-10.
10% black.
About 10% black when I started. By the time we left, it was like 75-25.
But you had already been socialized and interacted with white kids before.
At David E. Wegline, down in the projects, and then at Clifton Park Junior High School.
But too with sports.
And with sports, playing at St. Leo's.
St. Leo's.
And then playing for Edgar Lee Bell, because we had an all-black team. And we had one of the only all-black teams in the city, and the only black team in East Baltimore.
It made you more, it helped you to be tolerant and accepting of other people at an early age.
Donnie, when I got into the city council, the whites in the part of the district knew me. That's Jimmy McFadden from Flag. He played for the Cubs, all the Italian. You'd be surprised how many votes I got down there because they remembered. And I worked at the drugstore. I told you I was the first black to work there. I started in with Live Chicken Man, and I worked there for 2 weeks. But then my mother she was the domestic person for the doctors in Flag Court Pharmacy, and they needed somebody to deliver prescriptions and stock boy. And again, my reputation was I won't steal or anything. I was a good boy and I did my work. So I left there to go work at Flag Court Pharmacy for 33 cents an hour.
Well, how long you had to work to get a pair of them shoes? I want to know when you got the first pair of shoes you wanted.
It took about a year because you had to save up your money. And then you ran errands. You would go pick up food for people. You would, do little things. A Jewish guy befriended me. It's called Seymour Atmans, the owner of Atmans, right across the street from the drugstore. So that's when corned beef sandwiches were 25 cents.
You know how much they are today?
$4 or $5.
On Corned Beef Road, that man charged me $17.
For one, are you serious?
My first and my last one in a long time.
Oh, Lord.
Going to the supermarket. I couldn't believe it. Didn't even give me a sample.
Oh, my goodness. No, right there.
I know.
Right there. In fact, we used to get the cheap ones, the scrappy ones, because that's all we could afford.
More fat on them.
Yeah, a little fat on. That's why I like some of the ones with a little fat. They say, why you like a little fat? Because I grew up on it. A little tasty. But back then, because like I said, we were on old-fashioned welfare. So it was, the powdered milk, powdered egg.
But who had the best corned beef sandwich? You had Atman's, you had Jack's, you had...
Jack's. Lenny's came later. It was about 4 or 5 stores down.
Who had the best?
I was an Atman's guy.
Okay.
I was an Atman's guy. I used to sit in there with him, son, what do you want to become, and all of that.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. Mental.
So see, this is not a really segregated story you're telling me. You're telling me about a beautiful Baltimore.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But, it was we still had our problem, still boy and, they would call men and grown men boys. And, certain things were still going on, but that's what was going on.
I just know that there were other neighborhoods that were all black, and that's all black people saw was black people most of their life.
No.
No?
It was a whole different ballgame down there.
Mm-hmm.
And when I moved to, in 1960, we moved to Muir Street, and whites were still up there.
This is M-U-I-R?
M-U-R-A.
Okay.
M-U-R-A.
Okay.
Dew, Burns, and Hattie Harrison were in Douglas projects, and they moved up. Dew moved up first, then Hattie moved up, and then my mother moved up in 60. Hattie was the president of Dunbar PTA. Dew Burns was the shower attendant.
At Dunbar.
At Dunbar. And I was the history teacher. Dunbar didn't have a field. They had to go practice and play up at Clifton Park. They had to walk up there for practice and everything.
My God, that's a hump.
That's like I said, it was segregation. We didn't have anything down there. We had to go through a whole battle to get a new Dunbar in the field and all of that. But that's a long story, but we battled down. That's how we got all that stuff down there. The East Side Democratic Organization. I was as a teacher, I would come in and I would complain because I knew what we had at City. I knew what Morgan could do for us because we had the best black professors in the world up there. And they prepared us for the world. And they told us that we were just as good as anyone else because we knew that. In fact, I had one teacher, I almost got in trouble, a little Jewish lady with one of the freshman classes, was trying to tell us that we were no longer poor and that we were no longer lower class, we were now middle class because we were at Morgan State College then. I went to Morgan State College, that's where my degree stayed. And I said, well, miss, I beg to differ with you. That's what I am. My mother scrubbed floors in domestic, and that's what I am. And the kids said, man, you're not going to get an A. I said, oh, that's how I am. And but I'll never forget that, so I had to get her straight. But I ended up getting a fairly decent grade because I did the work. That's a little story I want to tell you about. This little teacher at Morgan trying to say we all middle class because we're at Morgan.
A non-black person.
A non-black person. And even the black middle class persons came out of families. They were saying, what did your father do? And what does your mother do? You know, it's like the Mitchells and the Murphys and oh yeah, it was like a caste system at Morgan too.
Interracial racism.
Oh Lord, light skin, dark skin. I mean,
I've heard those stories. That some people who went to Morgan would not be accepted into Howard.
That right. There was some exactly right, and there was some places you couldn't go. You would go in and go visit a girl, and you had to come in and talk to the father. And what do your parents do? And what is their profession? My mother does piecework. Okay. And then she would call her daughter and whisper and
Ask him to leave.
later on, I wouldn't stay long. A lot of that. Wouldn't stay long. Because you're not. We had that too.
How did that make you feel?
Okay. I'll tell you how God works. After I became relatively successful in the school system, department head, principal of the evening school, and then I went into the Baltimore City Council, and I would see the same people again, especially in the Senate. And I would give speeches at schools, and I said, one of my favorites was, when I was growing up, it was tough and I was on welfare. My mother scrubbed floors, and I was poor and skinny and didn't have good clothes on, and the little girls didn't want me. But now that I have graduated and I have a master's degree, and I became a city councilman and involved in politics, now they want to talk to me. And I would always say, you didn't want to talk to me then, and you're not going to talk to me now. And that was part of my presentation to my students. If you want to be something, don't let anybody tell you you can't. You can, even your own people. I would give that, and they would understand what I was talking about. Because some of our people, especially during that time, looked down. My mother, when we moved out of the projects, my mother said to us when we moved to Muir Street, and you ain't having them people come up to my house. I said, Mom, wait a minute. Christian, no, Because that's when the clientele of the project started to change.
She had reason to say that.
She had reason to say it. But those were our friends. She said,
wow.
Not up here. Because when we moved to Muir, as I told you, when we moved to Muir Street, white people were up there. Nice playgrounds, nice school. Fort Worthington was integrated. Luzerne Playground was integrated. And about 2 or 3 years, like 62 or 63, they were gone. They moved up to northeast Baltimore. They moved up Bel Air Road and Hartford Road, Frankfort and Bel Air Edison and all those places.
Some even moved to Hartford County, to Baltimore County.
That's later on.
Later on.
But the initial ones started moving, gone. They were getting up out of there.
Was that the beginning of the changing of the complexion of the black community?
Oh, absolutely. They were flying over there like flies.
And this is still before 68.
Yeah, a little bit before 68. That's correct. They were leaving. And after the riots, that was it.
What do you mean?
They all got up out of there. They got up out of there. During the riots, this one, nice one to tell this one too. Only one establishment on Pratt Street was not bombed and burnt up.
Because they employed black people.
They employed black people and they looked out for us.
And you looked out for them back in the time of trouble.
We looked out for them in the time of trouble.
Says a lot about relationships.
I said, Seymour Atman, if you ever get the book, it started in a deli. They donated several pages to me. I'm still buddies with a whole bunch of the Atmans because of that.
It's beautiful that you were able to live a life beyond race.
Exactly.
Even in the most racist time.
In St. Leo's, the D'Alessandros, Bertarelli, D'Alessandros ran everything down there. Little Nancy and her brothers. I mean, we knew all of them. We would have to, before every baseball season, we had to go down there and do church, Catholic church, and they did it all in Italian. And we used to like to go, especially when it was communion, because it was real wine. We could sneak and drink a little bit of wine and not get in trouble. And the service was only 1 hour. See, because at the Baptist church, they keep you there all day long. I mean, you be there 2-3 hours.
You right.
In the Catholic church,
Catholic.
we loved to go there because it was 1 hour, and we didn't know what he was saying, but you know, you took communion every time you were there. So I had some friends that would go up, get in line twice, try to go back
Get a
up.
double shot of wine.
Anyway, real wine, not, you know, because in our black churches they had grapefruit juice.
Welch's grape juice.
Welch's, well, you got it.
I used to hit that. I used to wear that grape juice
the,
out.
But the Italians had manischewitz.
Yeah.
Nice. You could smell it, right? Little priest out there and his little clam while he was drinking. I know he had a little corn in it. That's why they said he drink. But anyway, that's the integration process. I remember, again, one of the first times I was in the I Am American Day parade. And, you know, it goes all the way through Hollandtown. And I had my buddy rent his uncle or cousin's Cadillac. And I sat in that thing. And Memory of Petro used to put that together. And all the Italians. And I was in the parade. And, you know, Duburn's was big with all those Polish people and Italians.
He was older than you?
Oh, Karen Duburn's, yeah, a lot older. He was showered. I'm going to tell you a story in a minute. But I was in that parade and hey, Jimmy, hey, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? So they knew, how these people know you? I said, I grew up around here. But back to Muir Street and Hattie and Dubern. Remember I said he was shower attendant? And at 68, and Hattie was the PTA president. She had 2 sons there. Duburn's was Catholic. His daughter was integrated Catholic High. His nephew integrated, one of his nephews integrated Calvert Hall, and another integrated Curlin. They were the first to go. Those schools were all locked down, but he was big with the Archdiocese in East Baltimore. He was at St. Francis. St. Francis, where all the black Catholics would go, up on Caroline Street. Okay? And then the girls would go to St. Francis Academy down on Chase Street, 501 East Chase Street. And that's the Oblate sisters.
Mother Lang.
Mother Mary Lang. That's right. So, and I had a relationship with all of those kind of people. But anyway, I would sit at Dunbar because I knew of what City College had nice books and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the year, we would pack the books up and clean them up. And I said, well, what are we doing with these books? They say sending them to the black schools. What? Oh yeah, they were sending the books from City College to Dunbar.
When they would get new books.
And right, City College got new books. Poly did the same thing. So Dunbar, Douglas, it was only a couple of black schools, Dunbar, Douglas, and Cobb. And the black schools got the hand-me-downs. I'll never forget it. And a whole stack of books came in because I was in the history and social studies department. And I opened those books up. And back then you had to sign your name in because everybody had a book at City to take home with them. Yeah. Same thing in Poly, you had an army of books in your hand. And I could just see the names of people I knew. So we used to have faculty meetings. Pat Diggs was the principal, I'm sorry. And Noya McMillan was the vice principal at NAACP. And Clarence Blount was the vice principal. Right? Pat Diggs was the principal. And we'd have a faculty meeting and the people would come from, then it was called 25th Street, it wasn't North Avenue, because Poly was still on North Avenue. But they would come in and talk about resources for the school and all of that. Well, you know me, I was a radical. In fact, when I started teaching, I had black, red, and green curtains. I had pictures of Smith and Carlos holding their hand up
At the Olympics.
Oh, damn right. I had Malcolm X, like you see all these paintings here. My whole room had black posters on them.
I imagine you had a bush.
Oh, had big bush. And I see some of them yearbooks. And I took down them yellow curtains you used to pull down, and I put up black liberation curtains. Clarence Blount called me and said, son, you got to teach and work with everybody. I said, these kids had to understand what's going on. So when this white guy came in talking about the resources for Dunbar, my hand went up. I said, I'm sorry, sir, when are we going to get some new books? What do you mean? I said, we get hand-me-down books. Why do you say that? Because I used to work with the books at City College, and we have some of them in our book room that we use in every subject. And he looked at me like, Mr. Diggs looked at me, oh, then we're going to be in trouble. That radical stuff he talking about. So I got back to the teacher's room one day. We sitting in there, during the break in between, and Dew Burns and a couple others say, well, why you complaining all the time? Why don't you do something about it? I say, well, how am I going to do something about it? Get into public service. Dew Burns said he was hooked up with those politicians. And it harkened me back to when I was living in Flag House. We set them on televisions that we used to have aluminum foil and when the
for the antenna.
Oh yeah, and coat hangers to try to get the picture in. But anyway, story came on about Negroes, colored people in the council, and I said, well, all those people are white. I said, no. Somebody said, no. One of them was Henry Parks. He was fair-skinned. Park sausage.
More park sausages.
And he was talking about what was needed by coloreds and Negroes. I never forgot that living there. And I said to myself, wow, I can do that.
Now you're going to laugh at me. I didn't know Henry Parks was on the city council. When you first mentioned it, I was thinking Victorine. I did not know that.
Yeah, Henry Parks was on city council.
Did not know.
Little Willie.
He was on the city council? No. His wife.
Little Willie.
Right, his wife.
Get the book.
Oh, the book.
Called me
Okay.
Little Willie.
Yes.
All of it's in there. His wife came later, much later. Henry Parks was the first one. He was fair-skinned. I said, oh, I got me. And that nugget was there. So when these teachers and doing them said, get involved in politics, so I'm starting an organization called the Eastside Democratic Organization. And we're going to meet on Sundays after church, 3 o'clock, at St. Catherine's Catholic Church at Luzerne and Preston. It is now called Greater Kissimmee.
Wow.
But that was St. Catherine. I told you all the churches were Catholic. So we met on the side door in the basement downstairs and started the Eastside Democratic Organization. Dew, Bob Douglas, Hattie, Irby, all of them broke off from the Mount Royal Democratic Club and started their own political organization.
Mount Royal was mixed?
No, well, yeah, Mount Royal was mixed. Mount Royal was mixed. And the Bohemians weren't. That's Dew Burns, they were down on Madison Street, St. Wenceslaw, over there by St. Wenceslaw.
That's East Baltimore.
That's East Baltimore.
Okay.
Mount Royal met at the Art Gallery and the 5th Regiment Armory. And we started our own organization called the Eastside Democratic Organization. The liberal whites started an organization called NDC 2. They had NDC 5 and NDC 2. East Baltimore was NDC 2. Mary Pat Clark, Maggie McIntosh, all of them had a political organization. And we developed a partnership between EDO and NDC 2.
Maggie's roots go back that far?
Maggie, of course. Maggie's roots go back that far. that far. When they all came to town, because they all come from out of town. And they moved up all around lower part of Hopkins. And yep, so we developed a coalition, one of the first black political and white coalitions. That's how we got started. And we would split seats. Back then you had 2 senators, so one black and one white, same thing.
Is it safe to say that political organization began in East Baltimore?
Oh, absolutely. That was the first, and that was the largest for a very long time.
Because that's where black people began in Baltimore, East Baltimore.
Oh, really? Because they came in off the ships. Then they migrated later on to West Baltimore. And that's where the Jews and everybody were. I'm a Mason, and that temple, that's the Masonic temple.
During the
Synagogue, 1307 Utah Place.
Yes,
That's
yes.
the synagogue.
When you first said synagogue, I was thinking about the one up by Mondawmin toward Druid Hill Park.
All of them were synagogues, all the way straight up, because that's where all the Jews lived. And the wealthy people, Utah Place. You hear what I said?
Place.
That was wealthy. Place. That's where the wealthy people live. Again, I don't know if you read Not in My Neighborhood.
And Andrew Patera.
Yes. Have you read it?
I've browsed it.
Donnie. Read it. 2 books. They Call Me Little Willie and Not in My Neighborhood. Please.
Okay.
You'll see it. It's all out there. Segregated. All around City Hall was a black neighborhood. And the first highway to nowhere was 83 and split. It's all in the book. To get people from the county to the city. They came from Baltimore County down 83, split. And all that used to be all around where Mercy Hospital is and all that. Black neighborhood.
Can you go back to the Baltimore fire, the Great Baltimore Fire?
No, I just studied.
Not that you were living there, but I understand. I'm wondering, were there black businesses downtown? And if there were black people that lived...
businesses. Yeah, small. All neighborhoods had their own little businesses.
So if all those
Like
black
you
people
said.
lived down there, there were black businesses in downtown
They got
Baltimore.
cut out. Same thing with on West Baltimore when they wanted to build a road from all through Lincoln Park to come through, and they cut out my cousins and family's house because they had a big house off of Pennsylvania and Emerson Avenue, and they moved a lot of them people up to Forest Park.
South Baltimore, Leadenhall, they went through a similar thing with a highway.
That highway divided the neighborhood, split up neighborhoods in Baltimore. But and they moved up to like Forest Park, but back then, Forest Park was Jewish. Forest Park High School was mainly Jewish. Those are the Jews that couldn't go to city or wouldn't go to city. And in the book, if you read, They Call Me Little Willie, he was one of the first blacks to move into Ashburton. Ashburton was Jews. And when Willie went in, you'll read the book, they brought him up on charges of running numbers. But back then the numbers were all, the Italians had their numbers, the Jews had numbers, the blacks had numbers. It was, they call it honor among thieves. Same thing with gambling, same thing with prostitution, same thing with everything.
All right, I'm getting ready to challenge your history.
So, now it's like the Wild Wild West.
I got a question for you. Tom Smith, does that ring a bell?
Yeah, city councilman.
He was on the city council?
It was a Tom Smith. Dew Burns used to tell me about him a long time ago.
Yeah, he was
involved in government. Big
yes.
Yeah.
And a hotelier.
Yeah.
Lived in the 6600 block of Reisterstown Road.
No, before then they lived down.
Well, he had a bar at High Street.
But.
And the Smith Hotel.
Yeah, and they had property all over the place.
Yes.
But they all started like all around Bethel and Union.
Druid Hill.
Yeah, Druid Hill. That's where all the middle class Negroes were, and the uppity whites were in Utah Place. When we lived at Riggs Avenue, we couldn't go on the west side of Fulton Avenue.
That's what my daddy said. You couldn't go above North Avenue?
We could not go above North Avenue, and we couldn't go on the other side of Fulton.
What would happen?
They'd beat you up or lock you up. What you doing around here, boy? You know, they had the median strip was still there. You could not go on the other side of Fulton Avenue. That's the way it was.
What about if you were a delivery messenger, bicycle messenger?
Oh yeah, and cleaning, you can do all that. That's the same thing when we were in Flag House. Flag House, unless you were buying something, back then, all the stores, if you wanted to buy, you couldn't sit and eat any place. That's where they did Reed's Drugstore and Villegi's, the little Italian places. Even when I was working on Lombard Street, I had to go to the side door to pick up carryout. Had the best pizza in the world, carryout. You couldn't sit in there. Chipperelli's, I remember all them places. McFadden, how you doing? Sorry, I can't do it. They look out for me, give me extra meatballs, but you couldn't sit in there, you couldn't go in there. All them little, they had pubs. Whites had pubs all over the place.
You've seen a lot happen to this city.
Oh yeah, they were segregated. This place right here, this was black. This is all
Yes,
black.
I just learned that from the people in Hose
This
Heights.
side was black. The other side of Falls Road was white. That's them big houses, rich people. The poor black people here used to work like my mother did for the people across the street. This was another book is the other Cross Keys. It's all in there. Yeah, the hose thing and the water tower and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Walter Gill, City College guy, but his father was the dean of the history out at Morgan, and they all lived down the street. And they were segregated, but it was a black neighborhood down there, and the white boys were in Hampden, and then the rich white people were over on the other side of Falls Road, and the black people were here, and nobody interacted with each other. In fact, the white people didn't even like the Hampden, call them hillbillies, and they didn't want to associate with them or the black people.
How long did you know black people lived in Cross Keys? You grew up knowing it?
I grew up, didn't know it. When I came up here, we moved up here. When I got real bad with this thing, when I was in the Senate, because I wanted to get out of there, but I wanted to stay as long enough to get my pension up.
Okay.
So, because I couldn't get around and the social media thing. You know, when that social media thing came out, I'm an old guy, I know social media. So, you know, the young boys that wanted to revolutionize, get rid of Joan and me and Joan Pratt and the revolutionaries, and they all got it because they were in the
Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter.
the Twitter, and we couldn't do that. We were like I'm talking to you. We gonna knock on somebody's door and like I do, sit and talk.
Like Obama.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, all of them use the new stuff, and that new stuff caught me up. Plus, many of my constituents left. They moved to, Rosedale, White Marsh, even the black ones moved out. They moved out. That's why you see all these vacant buildings in East Baltimore.
And West Baltimore.
And in West Baltimore. And then when I got into politics, easy, we would lock it down. After we did 811 and a couple precincts in East Baltimore, the election was over because those were all our people. And you did it through all the churches. All the black churches were still there. And they were
Churches left East Baltimore and West Baltimore. A lot of them left.
The clientele changed. And the people, the church may be there, but they started driving in. right? Because they didn't live in the neighborhood anymore. When we were there, everybody lived.
The church was the center of
Church
Black
was
life.
the center of Black life. First Baptist, one of the first Baptist churches in this country. Faith Baptist, Fountain Baptist. I've been a member of Southern Baptist for 50 years. St. Francis for the Catholic.
You grew up Baptist, but you were well experienced in the Catholic Church.
Correct. Well, you always had to go to church. Like I said, our family church in West Baltimore was St. John's AME. When we moved to East Baltimore, in the projects, there was no church, black church down there. The only church in the neighborhood was St. Leo's. It was Catholic.
Your mom went there too then?
What?
To St. Leo's?
No. She didn't go. With just the kids.
Okay.
Just the kids. We went to the Helping Up Mission. They had church services at the Helping Up Mission.
It was a mission then?
Yes. It was a mission then for the men, but they had church on some place we had church services, and that's where you go. And my mother would go back to West Baltimore when she could, to St. John's, to her church. But we all went right around the corner, because back then you didn't have a lot of money, so you just had to walk out the door. My first pair of glasses I got from GBMC. GBMC was at Baltimore and Exeter.
Really? Didn't know that.
Before they moved out here. St. Joseph was on Harford Road.
What was the difference between us then and now?
Respect. The church. Do anything outside the church. And the fear that your parents didn't play. I brought you here. I take you out. This is all we had. Okay? And that was it. It was discipline.
So it all started at home.
It started at home.
We were more married then as a people. At least in the 40s and 50s.
In the 40s and 50s, yeah. In fact, we still have married couples in the projects.
And then also the projects, from what you said, was not meant to be forever.
That's correct. Was not meant to be forever. Like I said, we only stayed 4 years. I must have, we getting out.
Wasn't supposed to be 4 generations.
No, we didn't. The whole idea was to leave and to do something better. First chance you got. Get off of welfare. The welfare office was on Greenmont Avenue. And we couldn't afford a wagon, so we would take Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola carts and make wagons to go get our powdered milk, powdered eggs, a little butter, make cheese sandwiches and all that kind of stuff. No food stamps, none of that kind of stuff. Walked and did everything. We cleaned out the boats in the inner harbor. Whatever was left, we could take. If cabbage had a little finger hole on it, that was it. The potatoes had an eye on it, we took those. The fish weren't that good. The fish market wasn't Port Discovery, it was a fish market. It wasn't, all that stuff wasn't there. It was ships come all the way up. We would unload the ships, go down there, and that was our food. We bring it all back in our little hand-me-down wagons. See? Back then, they had the little red wagons. They used to, for $5 or $10 you could buy. We couldn't even afford that.
The Arabs were around also?
Oh, absolutely. Arabs through the neighborhood.
And they were, I would imagine, more in East Baltimore because that's where the water is.
Yeah, they were all over the place, selling good food, too. Yep, because they came down and got their food. But the first cut was for the upper class, what they call it, ritzy neighborhoods. They got all the good stuff, good bananas, and the potatoes, and the vegetables, and the yada, yada, yada. Same thing with the fish. But no, it was a great big fish market. It was something.
What kind of fish?
All kinds.
Rockfish?
It was a fish market. So it was like everything. Now it's out at Jessup, out at 175 Jessup.
I remember they had fresh fish at Lafayette Market.
Northeast Market, all of them. Downtown, fresh, bam. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it was, but you kind of like knew your place.